This is the Titanium Fitness Podcast, your sanctuary for physical strength, mental clarity, and empowerment. With your host, Chuck Beckham. Individuality matters. Our commitment goes beyond exercise. We're here to see you thrive inside and outside the gym. Now, on to the podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Titanium Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Beckham, and I have a special guest today, my good friend, client, soon-to-be local legend, Marc Spewak. Marc.
What's up, man?
Thanks for being here, brother.
I'm honored.
This is one of those cases where you started out as a client and then became a friend. So, but Marc, tell us who you are, where are you from, what a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I started training with Chuck pretty much I would say during the pandemic, right after 2020, 21 area kind of time. We actually were introduced to each other just before the shutdown. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do.
But my mom is an interior designer, home stager, and her business, Property Enhancements, is right next door to Chuck's.
Yes.
And she had worked out with you and some, new people that had worked out with you, and just that relationship you guys had built through, just being neighbors and everything. And so she kind of kept telling me, hey, you got to meet, Chuck. He's a great guy. And so ended up being able to come by your office and, was amazed by, everything that you had, and just really was touched by your, I would say just personal care for your gym and how much you wanted to help people. And that whole conversation was awesome. And that really sold me on you. And then I think it was probably a week or two later that the world shut down. And so we kind of, did a lot of stuff obviously through COVID, but my background is I own a personal coaching business for running. Also have a nonprofit called Spewak Racing, and that's a running club specifically, and we raise money for different organizations. In St. Louis, we sponsor a St. Louis City high school cross country team called Confluence Prep. We buy their shoes, their uniforms, and raise money for different organizations in the area. And so running is kind of my big background, and that's one of my motivations for working with Chuck was just to be stronger in my own running years back. So. It's been crazy. It's been a journey with you the last 6 years, and it's been really awesome, really special.
I think it's cool because we've also seen a lot of personal and professional growth. Marc and I.
COVID specifically. If you remember, we teamed up on a lot of stuff over Zoom with clients and stuff, and
Facebook Live.
Yeah, and it was one of those times that I think for both of us we have similar businesses and different businesses in a lot of ways, but the similar piece is that we both work with clients and we both need people to have things to access to, whether it's for you, equipment or goals and things like that. And that was hard during COVID for us. We didn't have races for people to train for. So we had to really think creatively and outside the box to connect to our communities.
And you're from St. Louis, correct?
Yeah, from St. Louis. Been here my whole life except for 1 year when I went away to New Jersey for school. And so pretty much just, a St. Louis loyalist, I would say.
Isn't it? I notice people from St. Louis, I feel they're pretty loyal to the city. They may have to leave, but they always come back to Anheuser-Busch and St. Louis Cardinals games, right? Yeah. And then, so where did you go to high school at? I got to ask that.
Yeah, I went to Ladue High School.
Okay.
So was there and actually had the opportunity to coach there for cross country and youth programs and stuff after I graduated. So I'm still connected, to the organization, to the high school. They've done such a great job over there.
So what'd you graduate in? What was your field of study?
In college, because in high school we didn't have anything specifically. In college, so I went off to school for a year, went to Rider University in New Jersey, and then I flunked out and came home to St. Louis and turned my life around. Got the opportunity to come back here and work at Big River Running Company. I worked there, sold shoes. Went to school part-time at Merrimack, and during that time, I was also, doing a lot of stuff like putting on charity running events, started my business with coaching at one point in that period of time. And so I kind of worked full time and then went to school part time through that process. And my area of focus was marketing because that's what I felt like I could apply to my job specifically. And then in 2021, finally graduated at Webster University. So 10 years later, I got my college degree.
That's incredible. Can we focus on that for a little bit to help others that might be going through something similar?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were in New Jersey at college.
Yep.
And then why do you think that didn't work out? What was the biggest reason?
I just think that, in high school, I think I had a very, very fun time, socially, and was running cross country, track and field, and that's what I went off to do at Rider. And I think that I probably didn't have the greatest habits going into college. I think at high school, you can get away with it, especially in athletics. But when you get to college, if you're still drinking a lot and still partying a lot and not sleeping and things like that, and then compound that with the school schedule and nobody there to kind of hold you accountable, you obviously have your team and your coaches, but you have so much independence. I think I just wasn't mentally prepared for that. So I think I just really enjoyed the social aspect, and I met some of my, great friends that are long life friends, and still talk to them and keep in touch with them for just a year, and met a lot of people that year, did a lot of things, went to a lot of different, Philadelphia sports games, or New Jersey, because we're in New Jersey, we're not far from New York City. So did a lot of fun things, but I think I just wasn't there prepared. So when I came home, I pretty much, I remember like when I officially figured out that I was going to flunk out, and decided just to come home in April before the semester ended, just kind of,
so it was the second semester when you kind of had that. And thank you for being open about this.
No, absolutely. I
know this could be a difficult thing, but I think the more that people learn about your experience, it can help them or a family member. Because my son's getting ready to go to college.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Ivan, you got to.
Yeah.
It's not easy. You might be smart, but it's not.
And you don't want to necessarily hear that, when you're that age. You don't want to hear that from your parents. You can have the best advice possible. I think a lot of it has to be learned by the person. I think that you have to go through that experience. And I think for myself, reflecting on it, when I realized that it was over and that it wasn't going to work out, I drove home, from New Jersey, which was like a 13 and 14-hour drive. And I just remember I felt like, okay, I can feel bad for myself on this ride home, but the second I get to St. Louis, I have to move on with my life. I have to, I have to get more serious. And that's why getting that job at Big River and going to community college, all those things, motivated me to be a better student, better person, and kind of clean things up, and really never looked back after that happened. So that year is kind of just a blip, and not a blip in the sense of like great relationships, and so grateful for the people that I met. And Coach Hamer at Rider, took a shot on me and, was extremely supportive in my decision, and continued to support me years after I left too. So it speaks volumes of the people that I was around. It just wasn't the right fit for me at that time of life.
And a lot of times I think that because Mark went through that experience his freshman year of college, do you think you would be the same person you are today if you would have just not had that thing happen? Because it's kind of like it's like an aha moment. Was that an aha moment for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're 19, you think the world is over if it doesn't work out the way that you thought it was going to work out.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, so many people will tell you the rest of your life, and you don't believe it at the time. And now that I'm 33, I understand completely that just, it's a significant time in your life, and it's not at the same time. You have so much time ahead of you. And so you just, I look back at that as that, it just taught me that I wanted to, I wanted to have success, and that wasn't the way to be successful. And I think that's what more of the aha moment was for me, was I have to just, figure this out and get on the right path. Now, while I had a much better career opportunity, from the standpoint of like those coming years, I did better in school and I did better from the job perspective. I still felt very lost for several years, because when you're not in that like traditional college world and you're the age of 19 to 24 years old, I would say, you just kind of feel misplaced in some ways. And so I got a lot of great experience work-wise, and people always told me you're going to be ahead of everybody else, in your late 20s, but you don't feel that way at that time. And then, what I think as I really settled into my identity in my mid-20s, realizing that my friends started to graduate college, they came back to town, and here I was. I had an established business, and I had other things that, that I get to get a kickstart on, early on.
And then, so now moving forward to what made you realize you wanted to be a running coach? I think that's pretty cool. And it's also, I applaud you for going to college for 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
That's incredible.
2011 to 2021.
I think by year 6, most people be like, this isn't met. But what made you want to, because, okay, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You have an established business. What made you continue to want to get that college degree?
I think that, it's one of those things where I totally believe you can go on and live a great life without a college degree, and you can make a very successful living, and met several people that have done that. But I think from a personal standpoint, it was kind of a finish what you started,
yes.
thing. It was more of it was never about getting that degree for the satisfaction of, being a marketing grad or things like that. It was more of I want to just show myself that I can do this and I can see it through. And I mean, it got harder to be motivated towards the end of it. I think with my parents' support, was a big, motivation for me to keep going. But I would say like my coaching business was in a really good spot in 2019 and 2020 and then 2021. And so going to class started to get a little bit, I would say, you don't even know the right word for
monotonous,
it, but
kind of?
it's just more of like you're sitting in a class and you need to be there for the credit, and then you also know that you have work related stuff that's going on and a lot of opportunities going in a lot of different directions, and it's kind of that fight with yourself mentally, like, me being here for 3 hours a day is kind of hurting my business in some senses, and so that definitely tested me in that, but I kept going and just realized that someday you're going to be done with this and you're going to be really happy that you have that degree. And how I see it is that, my job, might not, be here forever, and I need to have something, to fall back on. And at least I have that, the ability to say, hey, I'm a college graduate and I have work experience, and hopefully that will make me hireable if something happens.
I think too, deciding to finish that college degree probably helped boost it was a boost in confidence, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it's like, there's something about not finishing what you started that I feel like is detrimental to anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, it just kind of shows that everybody has their own path, and no matter what happens, you keep going for it.
Now, with competitive racing, what was your main race? Marathons, half marathons, 5Ks? What was like kind of your happy spot?
Yeah, I would say like when I was competing, and one of the things that I'll draw back to our experience together is that one of those things that you talk about, like when you're in school, that you're not like freshman year of college, I didn't have the developmental growth to understand that, like, if I go to sleep and do these things, I'm going to be successful in the classroom. And it's kind of the same with running, is that while I was most competitive, I had some really great years, and I'd say the half marathon was my favorite, the 10K. And obviously the marathon was enjoyable, but I didn't strength train and I didn't do the little things outside of it. So I ran a lot. I ran like 90 to 100 miles a week and was in really good shape and had a lot of success, but I was kind of always running and then would have a setback, running, have a setback, and so there was
what kind of setback?
Little stuff. Like in 2018, I was in the best shape of my life. And I had an Achilles injury, a partial tear in my Achilles, and it was totally, on me for that, like it was one of those situations where I was overtraining. I wasn't very strong, from those specific small muscles that you need to work on. You can be strong in the sense of you can run a lot of miles and be durable, but if you're not doing that right stuff, I always kind of like related to like it's a rubber band, and it's just going to break at some point, and that's kind of what happened. And so, I was in the best shape of my life, got injured, cross-trained a ton, didn't strength train, but came back, still ran really well for a couple of years. And I just wish during that time, man, I would have had the hindsight then, because I think that would have been really beneficial for my running. But I think, the half marathon, the marathon, 10K. But it was one of those things. I just really enjoyed the process and working hard and being with my friends doing it.
And then, so with that, let's talk about your running business.
Yeah.
What's your process? Like if somebody, hey, Mark, I want to be a runner. I want you to coach me. The step-by-step, like what's that process look like?
Yeah. So when somebody reaches out to us, they've typically been referred or they've seen us online and they're looking to be trained for, a variety of different things, whether that's they want to qualify for the Boston Marathon, they want to run their first 5K. And so our process is really just, similar to probably what you do, is have a free consultation meeting with them, figure out their goals, try to understand, what their wants and desires are, and make sure it's the right fit. I think that's the biggest thing, is that, we are really more about quality over quantity in that sense. And we want people who are dedicated and motivated to be a part of the process. And that doesn't just mean that they have to be super fast or run the Boston Marathon. It means that if you're hiring a coach and you're hiring us for this communication aspect of things, we're going to give it to you the same way, whether you're a first-time runner or a long-time runner. Like, we're going to give it, the best possible service that we can provide. We're going to ask questions, and we want to be a part of the process with you, and we're going to be invested in your goals. And if you don't respond and you don't communicate effectively, that's not going to be a good fit for us. And so I try to put that out there to people, is like, that's what makes our business unique, in the sense that sometimes people have the money to be able to spend on coaching, but they are just not good candidates to be coached. And that's totally fine. And I think if you can kind of recognize that, that's a good thing, because it saves yourself that process, because we just care that much about helping people succeed. And like I said, it's your goal, not our goal. But once you tell us your goal, it's a shared, common knowledge for us to be able to do whatever we can to help you reach that goal. And I've had enjoyment, working with people who I've just helped them try to be consistent with running a few days a week, to people who I've helped, who are trying to qualify for the Olympic trials. And it's just as enjoyable, because the difference, I would say, and you could have somebody that you work with that's super fast, or same thing with you with lifting. You could have somebody who's, very talented in the gym and all the rest of the stuff, but if they don't really care about the shared interest of, working with, having the coach relationship, things like that, it's not rewarding on our end.
Right.
And so that's the piece of it for us, is just figuring out, what is it that you want and how we can help you. And then realize you're basically getting, a very, I'd say you're getting a very experienced cheerleader, to support you in your goals and to be able to help you cross that finish line, whatever goal that is.
Then how do you assess that person? Because I know you're not a brick and mortar, right?
Yeah.
You do this
a
lot at home. Like, it's kind of like through email.
Yeah, through email, through call, Zoom calls, things like that. Our assessment is, we're asking you questions about, your previous running history, your goals, things like that. I mean, there's not really any, as long as you have you've qualified through your doctor, and your doctor says that you can run, you can participate in those things. That's kind of our barrier. It's if somebody comes to us and they're not cleared by their doctor, we absolutely can't work with that person. But, but other than that, like I said, there's not really a standard to have a coach. I think everybody can have a coach. I think, like you said, is that I think it's important for people to understand that if you're going to hire a coach, you need to be at a place of your life where you're committed to the process. And
that you listen to the coach.
Exactly.
So I experienced that a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, people that don't see results, whether it's in competitive bodybuilding or, just a regular gym hop.
Yeah.
That if they don't listen, they don't, I'm not seeing any results.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's see what you're not doing.
Yeah.
What do you need to do? But people that do see results, they listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's amazing how many people actually listen,
That's a hard piece,
Yeah.
And I think what for us is that we take the approach of, like, this is a process and a journey. Not
it is.
Not an overnight thing. And I never tell somebody who's going to call me that, tomorrow you're qualifying for Boston. I'm very honest with people. Sometimes
That's
too
great.
honest to, probably for some people's ears, if they call me and they're like, hey, I want to run a marathon and it's in 12 weeks, and they tell me their experience, I'm going to tell them, hey, I would really consider not doing that marathon. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm also going to give you now 20 examples of people that I've worked with that have tried this same thing, and this was their result. And that doesn't guarantee you're going to have a bad result, because I've seen crazy things. People can do a lot of wild things, and hopefully that doesn't motivate you now at home to think that you're the 1% of that. But my point being is that, if I'm a betting person, and at least with my experience, even if you did that, you weren't going to have the most enjoyable experience from that. And you're probably limiting yourself. And if ultimately you're looking to hire a coach, you're looking to improve. You're not necessarily just looking to improve for one race. You're typically somebody who wants to just get better and level up. And so that's what we really try to focus on, is just trying to help you level up and just be more successful.
Now, if somebody, let's just say they're 4 weeks out from a marathon and they've had really good running.
Yeah.
And they develop an injury of some sort or a strain. What is your protocol for that? If they have like a It could be, I guess, any time. If they're injured, what do you do?
Absolutely. You know, we're not in the business of trying to wear 5 different hats and try to, play people on TV that we're not. And what I mean by that is that we're running coaches, we're not doctors. We're running coaches, we're not strength trainers. We're running coaches, not yoga experts, things like that.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of great resources around us. And so if somebody gets hurt, we're going to ultimately, first shut them down and refer them to one of our medical partners if they're here in St. Louis, or if they're elsewhere. We're going to make sure that they get into the right care, somebody to see them. Mm-hmm. And then that person's going to assess them. We work a lot with, Brendan Donahue with Active STL. He's a shared friend of ours, and several people in town who do amazing work. Vanda Wilder on our team. She's with SSM and so many different folks. And because they're runners too, when they meet with these people, they understand, okay, this person has a race in 4 weeks. Mark, this is how I'd modify the training. This is what my recommendation will be. And sometimes they're going to say, hey, I don't think this person should run this race. And I'm pretty much going to agree with them, and that's how I believe that, it doesn't happen a lot. I say this now, and we'll probably now have like 5 people get hurt.
Hopefully
Jinx
not.
myself. But, when it happens, what I've learned as a coach is that the athlete beats themselves up a lot about it. And that's a time where a coach can really shine. That's when you can get them into somebody, that's going to be qualified to be able to help them. They're going to feel very taken care of. Because when you get hurt, you are in a limbo. I remember that for myself, getting injured and running. Like you're lost and you don't know what to do, and you feel like you disappointed yourself, you disappointed other people, and that's not necessarily the case, but you care about your goals and to be training for something. And a coach needs to help them understand that here's what we do to modify. Mm-hmm. I had an athlete, in the past year who, I put probably in every single email to this specific athlete, like talked about nutrition, talked about like, hey, this week is a week where it could be, a week where we overtrain because I'm giving you a lot. So please keep communicating. And this person did an amazing job of communication. Like they did awesome. They were fantastic about the whole process. And it was like every week they were killing this training, and 2 weeks out of the race got a stress fracture in their foot. And we communicated effectively the whole process. We kind of weighed our options on if we're doing too much and how to modify, but they didn't have any signs of anything going on. And we had a great conversation after that happened, and we just realized that athlete probably wasn't fueling their body enough, and that led to that stress fracture. And they didn't really realize it at the time, and then they really reflected on it. It's like, yeah, I did not feel my body well enough, and these are the adjustments. And so it was a great conversation for us to have, because now a year later we're stronger. This athlete went on to go a PR a year later, in their marathon. They're chasing bigger goals now, and they're in a better position than they were then. So as devastating as it was, it almost allowed us to reset and set better habits for the future. And in running, like if you don't feel your body, it's game over. In running, if you run all your easy runs too fast, it's game over, all these things. And so it's a learning lesson for the coach, it's a learning lesson for the athlete. And so all that to be said, a coach can really shine in those moments, because we can help them kind of figure out ways that we can get better for the future, while also instilling positivity and realizing that sometimes these things just happen. Freak accidents. I had a athlete, this athlete broke their toe, and it was just falling down the steps, and you can't do anything about a broken toe. And that took him out of a race, and so that was hard to watch because it's just such a freak accident, and so things happen, and I think that's where a coach can't give up or abandon their athlete. We have to self-reflect on, like, why do we think this possibly happened? And we have to own the things that we felt like, hey, this was probably what led it to it. And then let's discuss with the athlete how they felt about the situation. And that's why I always think it's important for an athlete and coach just to keep talking about, like, hey, I try to say to an athlete before the training cycle starts, hey, are you comfortable if I increase your mileage up to XYZ? Because, an athlete might just listen. Like you said, really good athletes just listen and they don't question. And that's where we can kind of get ourselves into danger land. And the last thing I'll say is, like, training is not just training. It's training on top of having a job, having kids, having commitments, traveling for work. And so if you don't quantify those things and you just give people training and just assume that they can just hit the work and do the work, and not adjust for those other things that are stress outside of running, you're going to fail. And that's a big piece too. So a lot of injuries for athletes aren't coming from the fact that they have like an irresponsible training plan or bad goals and things like that. It comes from the fact that they're trying to do too much on a schedule that's already full. And I just got done working with a high school athlete, and this athlete last night's bussing tables and is a hostess and a busser now, and so they're working for 8-hour shifts, a lot of time on their feet, and making this athlete stronger. But we have to think about that. So today we're not coming out and doing a speed workout this morning. That's not the thing that we're going to do. We're going to run miles. We're going to get miles in, get a workout in. And so a good coach has to understand how do you modify around these people's stress. And a really good coach is going to celebrate that person's life and say, that's great they have kids, that's great that they have these other commitments, and not make them feel like, can we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I was just saying, like, don't make them feel like shit for for being a person that has a life, because this is a hobby, not a job. And if you try to run this military process of like, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, all other cases, and then just not have empathy for those things, it's gonna be horrible. You know, and also, like, I know I just said last thing, but like the last thing I'll say about this on my tangent that really frustrates me is like, people should be enjoying this. It's not every day am I feeling like it's the best workout of my life working out with you, but I enjoy the process of being there.
Yes.
And if it's not something that you're enjoying, nobody's forcing you to do it. You're not forcing me to do it.
Right.
Same thing with running and coaching. We're not forcing these athletes to do anything. And so that's the piece I try to really lean on people is like, this is our hobby. This is not our job. So we are going to put the other things in your life first, and we're going to celebrate them, and then we're going to build a schedule around that. And that's how we're going to be competitive. And if we try to ignore those things and, look at those as, that they don't exist, we're not going to be successful.
Yeah, I think that right there probably separates you from a lot of the other coaches that I've run into, is like listening to what their daily life is like. If they're already on their feet, and running on top of that, you got to kind of cycle through. And when do you think they should, like, 'cause I know sometimes you'll have other athletes like run on the elliptical, like instead of running. What's like the protocol for that?
Yeah, we just did a podcast episode, about this with one of my athletes, and this was, over 10 years ago at this point. But I kind of believed, a lot of the training for a marathon needed to be X, Y, Z based on my experience training for marathons, based on my own coach's experience, and based on the people that I observed. And when you're a new coach, you draw a lot on your own experience, which isn't a good thing. It can be a good thing, but it also can be detrimental to your coaching. And I kind of had just this narrow-minded, preset of like, this is how this person's going to be successful. And this athlete did an amazing job. We had a lot of success. We ran 6 days a week, and qualified for the Boston Marathon, reached their goals, but then had injuries and things like that could have been prevented. And some athletes just don't respond well to running on roads every single day. The pounding on the joints and things like that. There are just some athletes that they're going to get hurt more doing that. And so this athlete came to me and was basically like, hey, I'm going to start biking more. I'm going to do a spin class, at University of Pennsylvania where they were at. Could we focus on that? And so we increased the cross training that we were doing. So instead of just saying, hey, you're running 50, 60 miles a week, we're going to do 30 of the miles on running and 20 of the miles on biking, or 20 miles on elliptical for some athletes. Well,
interesting.
This person started doing strength training too. They jumped about like 15 minutes in their marathon time the next time they ran a marathon.
Wow.
And a lot of it is that when you're hurt, you're not running. So when you're not out there, you're not training. So you can run 60 miles a week, or somebody can come in your gym and bench one time 250, and that's a huge feat. But aren't you more impressed by the guy that comes in and that could bench maybe, consecutive sets for, maybe 150 over and over and over again, right? Like, running is compiled on a lot of different training that you're doing over and over and over again. And it's not just this, I can run 60 miles a week for a couple of weeks, because we are looking at 365 days a year. That's what we're looking at when it comes to training. We're not looking at 1 month or 2 months and things like that. And a lot of athletes get so fixated on, I'm not running enough, things like that. But then they haven't proven that they can run a year at the mileage they're running right now. It's like, it's one thing to say, oh, I want to run 80 miles a week. And then if you look at 365 days a year, they might average 30 miles a week. And that would be irresponsible to give them that kind of mileage. That's when they're going to get injured. So going back to this athlete specifically, the cross training just was huge. And this person's always benefited better with cross training. And so that helped me. And I told this person, I was like, hey, I've had so much success with so many athletes over the years because of you. Because you taught me what we needed to do differently.
Yeah.
And that helped me. And now, you see athletes that come to your gym that I work with who are on the elliptical, and they make that their jam, And so it's a very interesting thing. I think coaches need to be more creative. Coaches need to be more flexible. And can't just think about this narrow mindset. It's easy to do that when you're working with a lot of people and you have set thought processes, but you have to understand that every person's different and every circumstance in their life is different.
Yeah.
They might have all the time in the world. They might be going through a divorce. That's probably going to be really hard on them. They're probably, when somebody's going through a divorce, if I've learned anything, they don't feel their body very well during that time, and they don't
stressed.
sleep well. Yep.
Yeah.
And they don't sleep well. And sometimes when they're going through the divorce, they have kids. So add that compile on it. So then you need a coach in that moment to say, hey, I think we don't do that race. Let's just focus on running easy. Let's take a week off. Let's do those things.
Yeah. Now, if somebody is feeling like they want to race or work out or, run.
Yeah.
But they're not motivated, what would you say to that person? Like, I want to do this, but they just don't do it.
Yeah. And I think that's just a classic case of you want something that you really don't. That's what I would say, because anybody that wants something is going to do it. If you have the desire to do something, you're going to do it. And I think in this day and age, social media is amazing. It is so inspirational, and it makes people get really excited on certain moments. Like somebody watches an Instagram reel and they see a wedding. They probably think, and they're single, oh, I'd love to have a wedding. Do they want the marriage? They probably just want the wedding, right? And that's the same thing with marathons. So many people watch marathons, and they get so excited. And they say, I want to run that marathon next year in New York. And then what happens is they sign up for it, and they complain the whole time about training for it. And that happens a lot with people. And it's just the reality is that if you're going to do this, be consistent year-round, you have to be motivated on a day like today when it's really warm already at 5 a.m., in the middle of the winter, when it's really cold outside and it's dark. Not that those days are easy for those athletes who want it, but their desire, their passion, those things never have to be questioned. They're going to be there. The discipline's there because it's an internal want. It's not coming from this desire because of social media or other things. It's really coming because they truly love the sport and they love the process. And that's how I feel about it. I've always felt that way about the sport. And so there's nothing wrong with people who are more bucket listers, but I would say as somebody that is considering it because they saw it on Instagram that inspired them, don't just start with a marathon. If that event really inspired you, sign up for a 5K and see if that motivates you. Because race settings at a 5K, a local 10K, these smaller races, you've been to our events, those are just as magical, right? Chain of Rocks this past year, things like that. Like those are awesome, mornings and experiences. And those feelings, that's how we feel all the time as runners. It's just like people coming into your gym. You can go on Instagram and see some crazy workouts that people do at these big high rocks, tournaments and things like that. But the magic of lifting every day and being in this environment, it doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're, in the middle of America or you're in a New York City gym, you can probably enjoy it.
Yeah. And then, I also noticed how when at a race, you're like, come on, let's go, Jenny, you're doing, so that's really cool that you support them that way. And thank you for being on today. I'd like to have you on for part 2.
I'd love that. Thank you for having me.
So how can people get a hold of you, Marc?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. I think I'm on there as like Marc Spewak 10 or something, something along those lines. You can follow us Spewak Training, so SPEWAK Training, or Spewak Racing. Those are 2 other avenues. You can find our website, our coaching website, Spewak Training, and then the running club here in St. Louis, it's the nonprofit, is Spewak Racing. So there's a lot of ways you can find us. We're pretty much, if you put in Spewak on Google, you'll probably find me at some point.
Yeah, you will. So, Well, thank you, and we'll have Marc back for part 2. And Titanium Fitness website is titaniumfitnessllc.net.com was taken. I always like to say that. But thank you. We'll see you next time.
Titanium Fitness. Connect with us. Call 314-582-3872 or email titaniumfitnessllc@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. Strengthen your body, strengthen your mind. Titanium Fitness.